Okay, great. So this is our first of two sessions on the Uni Eco eLearning modules. And welcome. And the plan for this session is we're going to introduce our Uni Eco eLearning modules. We're also going to learn about two of our modules from our experts from Trinity College Dublin and the University of Montpellier. But also we need you. So we are going to be having some interactive questions for you to help us develop our learning content. So just to start off, what I'd like to do is, and I'm just checking here, everybody can see my slides. Yep. So if everybody could go to mentimeter.com. So we go to menti.com and enter the code 62106847. And what we're going to do is start with a short quiz. So if everybody has a go there, maybe Guy, if you wouldn't mind putting the code there into the chat. And we're starting off with a very short question. So if we have a think about, what do you think the percentage of higher education students have heard about the Sustainable Development Goals and know what they're about? So if we have a think there, we have 32%, 49%, 73% and 92%. So I'll give you a couple of seconds to add in your thoughts there. So we've lots coming in at 49%, 32%. Yep, so the correct answer is actually 49%. So only half of these students that were surveyed, of a survey of 7,000 higher education students, actually had heard about the Sustainable Development Goals and knew what they're about. So there was lots who had heard about them, but they didn't actually know what they were about. So our second quick question is, what percentage of higher education students report that they would like to learn more about sustainable development? So we have three options there. We have 51%, 71% and 81%. So see if you can put in some, what you think that higher education students like to do. So yeah, we have 9 responses there at 81%, which is the correct response. And I think what's really interesting about these two very brief questions is that there's an appetite to learn more about sustainable development, and also that there's a knowledge gap. So for higher education students, people want to know about this. So why are we creating e-learning modules on sustainability? So to give a bit of a background on this, as we've seen from those two questions, the first is to increase knowledge, and also because there is this knowledge gap there. But also going back to our proposal from the EU, we've said that we want to make tailor-made training on sustainable development. And some of this is based on the analysis of IO1. And I think Michelle will talk a little bit about this. We also want to design interactive, sort of exciting e-learning modules to help change behavior. So rather than just presenting information, we want to help change behavior. And we also want it to be accessible and widely used. So what are our modules? We will ultimately have 5 modules, and at the moment we have 2 in the first phase. So we have one on the carbon footprint from the University of Montpellier, and we have one on consumption of waste that was developed by Trinity College Dublin. So what we're going to do now is, I'm just going to stop screen sharing here, and we're going to have a presentation from Michele Hallahan. So I think all of you have met Michelle at this stage. She is the Sustainability Advisor to the Office of the Provost. And did you manage to fix your audio there, Michelle?
I did, thank you.
Brilliant, perfect. My heart was going at the start there a little bit. So Michelle is going to talk us through very briefly why consumption and waste was chosen for her module. And then at the end of her presentation, we're going to have 2 very short interactive questions that hopefully all of you will be able to give us some input to help us improve our modules. So I'll leave it up to you, Michelle.
Great, thanks very much, Sylvia. So I'm going to share my screen here and go straight into the presentation. So I hope you all can see that. So yes, the e-learning module that we chose at Trinity was on consumption and waste. And you might ask, why did we choose 2 topics? Well, waste could be handled on its own, I suppose, but the reality is that consumption is the first step to producing waste. Everything that we buy, everything that you and I go out and purchase, absolutely everything will ultimately become waste someday. And that goes from everything from food that we purchase to plastic wrapping, to clothing, to furniture, to cars, to vehicles and bicycles and everything. So United Nations goal number 12, which is about responsible consumption and production, acknowledges this fact that there's a relationship, a direct relationship between consumption and waste. So we felt it was important to incorporate the two in the same, there we go, sorry, in the same module. And the other thing is that nature is not designed to break down all the stuff that we build. So you imagine all the chemicals and plastics and, you know, refined materials that go into the building of so many of our products nowadays. I mean, furniture is not designed to be broken down by nature. It's stuffed with polyester. It's got all sorts of brominated flame retardants in it. None of these are all poisons to nature. So nature cannot break down our stuff. So we've got a mounting volume of waste getting bigger and bigger every year globally. So our waste is actually growing exponentially. And of course, we're being pushed by marketing to go out and buy more in this endless pursuit to somehow achieve happiness through buying things, which of course is a lie. But we are pushed to be consumers, and especially in the developing countries, there's a very strong drive to make those countries, turn the populations of those countries into consumers the same way we are, and we can't sustain this. In fact, 80% of waste globally is produced by Western European countries and the USA and Canada. So we ultimately have a responsibility to stop our over-consuming. So the topic that we chose was based on the Uni Eco Survey that Sylvia mentioned. This was a survey that was conducted in 2020 by all 5 partner universities within the Uni Eco project. And we put a survey out to staff and students with about 37 questions on it about a wide variety of topics under the umbrella of sustainability. And one of the questions that we asked, which I felt was a very key question, was to ask people what topics they would most associate with sustainability. So these are the topics that were offered, everything from air pollution all the way down to economic development, human health, urbanism, water management. And you can see from the red bar here that waste management was the biggest topic. So this was the number 1 topic that people associated with sustainability. And then secondly, food production consumption was the second topic associated with sustainability. So we felt that consumption and waste would be very good mates in the same presentation. So the creation of the module was, we thought long and hard about this. We decided that we were going to develop a module that would cater to anybody with any level of knowledge about consumption and waste. So we really wanted to start with, we didn't want to leave anybody out. We wanted to ensure that people who didn't have much of a knowledge base in relation to these topics would find the course easy to do. We didn't assume that people would already know what the word recyclable means or the word biodegradable, so we covered these elements within the module. And we also recognized that many people don't make that connection between consumption and waste, so we really wanted to make that very clear to people. So the module is structured with 10 questions, a 10-question survey at the beginning, and that was to enable us to gauge people's level of understanding. So then we could ask questions at the end to see if they had managed to improve their level of knowledge. We included a 20-minute animated video called The Story of Stuff, which was handily available in all 5 languages, so it can cater to all the participants in all the universities. And then we have a presentation for about 45 minutes covering topics, which I'll show you in the next slide. And lastly, we have a short quiz, like I said, just to check people's knowledge, to see what they learned. And also, if you ask people to participate in a quiz or some kind of activity after they've learned something, it actually helps them retain the information. So the video we chose was this wonderful little award-winning video that was created in 2007. And you might think, oh, it's very old, but actually the story still remains. It's all about how we extract materials from the environment. We do a lot of damage by doing that. We take those materials, we manufacture them into usually very cheap, very poorly made products, which then don't last very long. And at the end of that linear system, extraction, production, and then consumption in our own homes or wherever, they end up being tossed out, thrown out somewhere, thrown away somewhere. And they end up being incinerated or landfilled, or a portion of them get recycled. So this video has been translated into, I think, over 30 languages at this point. A lot of it is just subtitled or dubbed, but nonetheless, the goal is to make it as available as possible to as many people as possible on the planet. So some of the topics that are covered in the module, we covered what is consumption. We covered the problem with consumption and consumer society. And, you know, we're all pretty much aware at this point, or some people are certainly aware at this point, that this is one of the big contributors to climate change, the constant extraction of materials from the environment, the manufacturing, which takes all sorts of resources, and then the pollution at the end of the life of the materials. We also covered steps to conscious consumption. So we wanted to enable people to think intelligently about what they go out and consume. So instead of going out and buying something cheap that might break in a year, maybe you could spend some more money and buy something that could last for 5 years or 10 years or even 40 years. So that would be more about conscious consumption. We talked about annual municipal solid waste generated around the world. And this was to give people a kind of a global context for what is going on. So it's not just about our own countries or our own universities, it's globally what is happening with all of this waste. And the projections are pretty staggering. They're expecting 70% increase in waste over the next 30 years. So this is something that the planet can't afford. So we really need to start rethinking our consumer habits. We looked into the hierarchy of waste reduction. And I always find it interesting that a lot of people I talk to will say, oh, well, I recycle, as if that's the best thing you can do. And it's actually the second worst thing you can do. Throwing something away is the worst thing you can do. Recycling is actually the second worst thing you can do, because while recycling is better than throwing it away, it still takes a huge amount of resources to remanufacture those materials back into new materials. So it's much better if we can reuse things or repair things or hold on to things for as long as possible. We looked into plastic waste because, of course, that's a very topical subject at the moment. In the past few years, people have really become aware of how much plastic is in the world and that it's not going anywhere. It's not being broken down because nature is not designed to break these materials down. We looked at food waste and we talked about how to compost your food waste. If you could be doing it at home in your own garden, or you could be putting that food waste out on the street for services to come and take it away and bring it to a large composting facility. And then we looked at zero waste, and we looked into the ways that people can make their lives a bit more about zero waste, which is about minimizing your waste to as little as possible. So our goal from this module is that we hope people will gain an understanding of consumption, of waste, the variety of waste and the volume of it and all the rest, and the pollution caused by both of those issues. And we also want people to come away with some handy tips, things that you can adopt yourself easily in your own home without having to buy materials, buy bins or buy infrastructure, just little things you can do to change your habits. And that could also end up freeing up some money. So instead of going out and buying lots of things, you could borrow things, you could rent things, you can share things with neighbors. And there's great ways to minimize your waste footprint, which has a knock-on impact, a positive impact then for climate change and for pollution in general. So yeah, just a few examples there at the bottom. You could borrow items instead of buying, buy only the food that you know you'll eat in a week, because on average, Europeans throw out 40% of the food that they buy because we overbuy, we buy too much. And then by the end of the week, we've got oranges turning green in our fruit bowls because we haven't used them. So buying very carefully only what we can eat in a week. Refusing things like disposable straws and drinks containers, bringing your own cutlery, your own drinks containers with you so you can reuse those, and then buying secondhand wherever possible. There's so many great secondhand shops. So that is it for me. Thank you very much for your attention, and I will hand it back over to Sylvia.
Thanks very much, Michelle. That's brilliant. It's a lovely module. I really recommend it. And I know there were some technical issues over the weekend, but the module is available now to be done. And we have the link there in the chat. So just a very, we're running a little short of time, but I'd like to get your viewpoint on this module. So we're going to ask you a really quick question back on to your mentee. One second here. So if you could think of 3 words And what do you think are the most important for people to learn about waste and consumption? So if you were to think about topics about waste and consumption, what do you think is the most important things that people should know and people should learn? So maybe have if you put the code in 6210-6847 again, and have a think of 3 words that you think might be used. Very good. Repair, reuse, reduce. And the reason we're asking you this is we want to check that what we've done in our module corresponds to actually what people want to know and what people feel is important as well. So do we have any other responses coming in? I know it's oh, brilliant. Think before you buy. Excellent. Can you reuse it? Michelle, do you have any comments on the words that are coming in here?
Yeah, it's great to see reuse come up a number of times, and reduce, because those are much preferable to recycling and throwing out. Repair as well, and prevention, of course, is the first step. Yeah.
I think what's really interesting here is I think the people who are in this session do have a great knowledge of this already, but it's great to see what's important for you. And what we'll do with these words is we'll take them and we will check our module and just make sure that we're really integrating this within it. So I'll leave that up there so that you can all keep adding in your words. And I might bring on to, I think it's Alice. Unfortunately, I think Julienne couldn't make it. Alice, are you there? Hi, Alice. Great to see you. Thank you for coming along.
Hi, Sylvia. How are you? Can you hear me well?
Yes, we can. Brilliant. So just to introduce, Alice is going to be doing the presentation on our second e-learning module, which is the carbon footprint. And the University of Montpellier have created another wonderful module all about the carbon footprint, which is, I suppose, it's a tricky concept, as I think Alice will talk through, and it was the second of our 2 modules. So Alice, I'll let you start your presentation there. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Sylvia. I'm going to share my screen. Can you see it now? I guess you can.
It's in presenter mode, Alice, so we can see the presenter mode.
Here you are.
Lovely.
Okay, so first, thank you for having me. Thank you to Trinity for organizing all this great event that we're already enjoying so far. First of all, I would like to apologize for Julien Rhone, the professor who created this model, because unfortunately he was called for a last-minute meeting, and so he's not able to make the presentation today. And I'm going to present it myself very briefly. So first, why did we decide to make a module on carbon footprint? First of all, as Michele told you before, we had a survey between students and staff, and that was one of the subjects that was selected as one of the most important by the university population. Also, it is a transversal topic within the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. For example, it's part of the goal number 7, affordable and clean energy, the goal number 8, decent work and economic growth, and it's also linked to the number 13, climate action. It is a very actual topic. Europe just exposed its 5th for 55 plan, meaning that the objective of the European Union is to reduce its carbon emissions by 55% before 2030. And carbon footprint is also a topic very much covered by the media in general, but still confused for most of the population. So to present you briefly the development team at the University of Montpellier. So first there is Julien Rhone, who is Associate Professor of Organic Chemistry and Biochemistry. And for the module, he worked mostly on the link between energy consumption, economy, and global warming. And then we have Camille Pernel, who is head of the European Projects Unit, and Elodie Ernoux, who is deputy head of the European Projects Unit. And they worked to present you a definition and the calculation of the carbon footprint. The development team worked together to choose the contents of the module. Then each of them worked individually on their part, and then there was a common proofreading and improvements that were made on the contents, and they met together on the visual and the videos, etc. So our goal is to give the learners the big picture to help them understand why it is so complicated to reduce their carbon footprint. It is also to show what can be done and who can act on what, and for learners to feel less guilty and at the same time to be entitled to act at the individual level, and to give some clues to help calculate your own carbon footprint, analyze it, and take the relevant actions you're ready to take to improve it. So the main topics covered in the modules are energy, the link between energy, GDP growth, consumption, and the counterparts that comes with the use of the energy, and also, of course, the links between energy and climate change. And the second part of the module will teach you how the battle for climate change is a battle to be fought collectively. It will help you learn what is your individual footprint, what is the impact of individual climate actions, to show you that even if you think that your actions might be very few on the scale of the planet, everything is really important, everything counts. And finally, it will help you calculate your carbon footprint. So on successful completion of this module, the learners will be able to understand the links between economic activity, energy use, and climate change. They will be able to define what the concept of carbon footprint is. They will be able to understand the calculation methodology and how to interpret the results. They will be able to list examples of activities generating a negative impact regarding greenhouse gas emissions. And finally, they will be able to calculate their own carbon footprint. If I may add a small comment, our objective at the University of Montpellier is to have this learning module compulsory for all the students that will be living on international mobility, for them to be able to know the impact of their travels and to have to know the impact on the environment. So thank you very much for watching.
Thank you, Alice. That was great. Really great overview of the modules. And I really like the way that your module is going to be used very practically for students, you know, before they go on mobility. And I think that's very important, and it ties into, I think it was one of the Utrecht best practice this morning. And they also had a promotional video about encouraging sustainable travel when people are being mobile. Obviously in Ireland, it's a little bit more challenging because we are an island, but it's great to see that, you know, the ideas are there, and, you know, there's an enthusiasm for transferring this knowledge to students and staff. So just before we tie up, I have a couple of questions related to the Montpellier e-learning module that I'd like you to have a think about. So again, if you go back to your Menti page, and what we're doing in this one is, as Alice mentioned, there were 5 learning objectives. And as she mentioned, the learning objectives are what we intend to teach students that they will know by the end of the module. And so we have understanding links between economic activity, energy use and climate change, defining the carbon footprint, understanding the calculation methodology and how to interpret results, listing examples of activities generating a negative impact regarding greenhouse gas emissions, and how to calculate your own carbon footprint. So would you be able to choose, what do you think is the most important learning objective there? So I'll give you a couple of moments, because just to have a think. Great. So I think what we can see here, that it's actually fairly balanced, but it's the calculation of a carbon footprint is a very strong response here that people would like to know. And again, the reasons we're asking you this is just really to check in our module that we're really addressing what's important to our learners. So it's fairly well balanced across all of them there. And just finally, before we wrap up, because I know we are moving to a webinar session, we have one final question. And again, this is the 3 words, as we did with Michele's module on waste and consumption. What do you think is most important for people to learn about a carbon footprint? So this could be anything you could think of. It could be related to the learning objectives. This could be something that you don't know anything about. This could be something that you feel would be important for people. So I'll give you a couple of seconds. It's a bit of a tricky question, this one here. Very good. How to reduce it, what causes it, and how to explain it. That's really nice. Very simply put, but very good. Easy hacks to reduce. Yes, and that's actually something I definitely like to mention here, that all of our e-learning modules, we're focusing on changing behavior. So rather than just presenting information at the end of the module, we have tips and tricks. So, sorry, 5 do's and don'ts to help you reduce your impact, and for example, on waste and consumption or in the carbon footprint. So loads of comments flying in now. So again, behavioral change, yeah, and that's what we have at the end. We have the tips and tricks, which I really like, because sometimes some of these concepts can be very, I don't know, high up in the air, and it's very difficult to actually think about how we can do something actionable and easy to change our behavior. So we're really trying to focus on that in our e-learning modules. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing now, because I know we're running and we're at 10 past now. So I'm just going to stop. And what I have just finally, what we're going to be doing in the next session. So in our next session, which is on Thursday, we're going to go into a bit more detail about SDG 4. And with this is quality education. And it's really sort of stemming from these e-learning modules and why we're doing them. So I'll be looking into SDG 4. I'll also be explaining how and why we designed our modules in this way. And this could be in a way to help anybody else thinking of creating e-learning modules. There's a pedagogical framework that we're using that I think really addresses behavioral change, which is very important. And again, there are so many free online tools out there, you know, that we would like to really share our framework that we've used to create our modules with all of you as well. And then we will need your help again to help us communicate our modules. So we'll be asking some questions with Mentimeter again, and then our plans for the future. So we have 2 wonderful modules, and I'd really encourage you to do them. You can get a certificate at the end, which is always positive, and and your feedback is really important to us. So I'm going to close up this session now.